And then I will go ahead and start the practice. So a lot of times when I do our particular focus today, I always think of if someone does not have a real idea of what yoga is, this is what they think of when this is the type of postures that they think of when we practice yoga. So I think it'll be fun, but we're going to do a practice with eagle. So in eagle pose. And if you're unfamiliar, I don't do it every week, but I always think and imagine that if you are coming to practice in summer, you are a dedicated yogi and you can do these more advanced moves. So it is a lot of shoulder work. I'll just say that also, but hopefully I'll give you lots of options to work with. So then let's go ahead and find a comfortable position to start out with, just a little bit of centering. And if you are comfortable, maybe close your eyes for a moment. And the breath practice I'd like to offer is a practice of breath retention. The reason why you would not do breath retention is if you are concerned about high blood pressure or do not have a regulated blood pressure. Then just simply skip any breath pauses or holds and continue to breathe as you are. Now, I like to sometimes think of visuals with the breath. And so this one is going to feel like a slope, not quite a mountain. It doesn't have peaks, but we're going to think of a gentle kind of rise and fall of a hill. And it actually kind of reminds me of the dunes that are in Kohler-Andre Park, if you're familiar. So they're just going to be these rolling hills where we go up and down. And if you think of an inhale and an exhale, they're the sides of this hill. And so the next time that you inhale, you can think of the lift up. And then as you exhale, the roll down. Now at the top of usually more like curves or slopes like this, there's usually a little bit more of a rounded or a little bit of not a sharp peak, but a rounded top. And so this is where we're going to invite in just a little bit of a pause to focus on breath expansion and a little bit more pacing to the breath. And so thinking about this in terms of pace, you'll want to, as your next inhale, you're going to inhale up. When you get to that sort of peak or top of the slope, you're going to pause for about that same amount of time and then exhale out. And so again, you'll breathe in, pause or hold, and then breathe out. What you want to find is a space where you're not having to gasp for air or yawn too quickly. You want this to feel gentle on your nervous system, that it's not causing its own distress or strain. While we don't often regularly hold our breath unless we think of like going underwater, or if we're surprised by something or straining or doing something strenuous and physical in the body, breath retentions do have a purpose. And one of them is to allow us a larger breath capacity and sometimes accessing our tissues and our muscles a little bit deeper. Now, if you've been cycling through that little breath hold and then releasing, let's start to take out the pause and notice if you do have a sense of an elongated breath. So the next time that you inhale and exhale, You might notice that that time or duration of the breath hold starts to smooth itself out into a bigger breath. If there's any way that you'd like to center or pause for a little bit longer, take all the time you need. And then when we're ready to move, you can start to blink or open the eyes if they've been closed. You might adjust a little bit to get comfortable in the seat. And then we're going to do a little bit of work starting with the shoulders. So let's go ahead and open up through the right side of the body. So one way to do this is to simply lift that right arm up and over into a seated side stretch. If this does not feel good for your shoulder, like I said, we're going to spend some time in the shoulder, so just take care of you. You could do something like cactus arm instead, or something like fingertips near or on top of that collarbone. So we're working through length to the side of the body. Your other hand can either press into the side or rest or hold onto the chair. And then we're going to think about that capacity of breath into that right side or those right lungs. So take a deep inhale, maybe even a little pause or curve at the top before exhaling. And we'll do that a few more times into that right side, the right lungs. This is so good for our intercostal muscles, which are the spaces that are in between the ribs. If we gently expand the breath and give them a little bit more space, they really do benefit from that. Take one more inhale here. Now, as you exhale, go ahead and open those arms into a T. And we're going to do our first crossed position with the arms. So here are a couple options. You can cross the right elbow underneath the left, and then you can either take it to a hug. You could take it to something like genie arms if that pinches the shoulders too much. Or if elbow on top of elbow is okay, you're familiar with Garudasana or eagle arms. It is this forearm stack. Now, we will be doing eagle pose. So if you are just letting your shoulders warm up and you can get there later, that is okay too. But just find something that feels good for you just to start. This is our first few breaths here. And it's a lot of shoulder stuff. So be kind to your shoulders. Don't strain or effort. We're going to find the eagle arms that work well for you today. Should feel maybe the ability to breathe into your shoulder blade area. So breathing into the back of the ribs, allowing the breath to accentuate or expand into those back rib tissues. I mentioned those intercostal muscles. We have inner intercostals and outer intercostal muscles, and how they work and how this expansion and this space by breathing stronger into them is they glide against each other. The more that we expand or gently guide them into more expansion, they glide a little smoother. They let us breathe a little easier when we're done. All right, on your next inhale, let's go ahead and unwrap those arms out to a T, then float the arms up. You can press palms together, bring hands to heart center. And now let's go ahead and walk down towards a forward fold. Now you can stay in the centered forward fold, especially if this feels like a lot of stretch for that low back. If you're doing okay with a stretch, go ahead and walk the hands a little bit more over to the left side. So you can walk them to your left shin or left toes. Breathe into that back. Walk those hands back to center and then slowly articulate or roll back up to a tall spine. let's go ahead and open up through the left side now. So you can start out with that extended length through the side of the ribs, breathing into the sides of that rib cage. And then you've got a couple hand options. You could be using the arm as extension. You could be doing more of a cactus. You could be doing fingertips to the collarbone. We're mostly focusing on that space that we can create through the sides of the rib cage. Now, if you feel like this gets a little static or you don't feel that intense of a stretch and you're wanting more sensation or awareness to this, even on the inside of the body, you can create more space beyond just breathing into the ribs, right? So you could do something like that left hip, you could press it down to the seat of the chair. So you're going to push down and then the torso just kind of automatically lengthens up. And then at the same time, you can support that length by guiding the arm or the top of the rib a little bit more open. So it's this opposite direction where you push the hip down, you lengthen up through that shoulder, and you maybe get just a little bit more. And then don't forget to breathe into that space, nice and full. Take one more inhale here. And then as you exhale, we're opening up to a T. Go ahead and cross left elbow underneath right. And again, you're going to pick either that wrap like a hug. Genie arms is a good option. You could do the forearms kind of parallel to each other in that eagle arm wrap as well. I personally like to let my shoulders warm up a little bit, and maybe I'll do the wrap later, but something that just really doesn't pinch or challenge the body beyond maybe feeling like you're getting a little bit more space from the shoulder blades without any type of sensation or pain. Right? Take care of your body. Breathe into the back of the rib cage here, getting space in between those shoulders. Kind of like giving yourself a hug, right? We need more hugs in the world. And I don't care that I sound hokey when I say that. I think it's true. We need more hugs in the world. All right, take one more breath here, breathing into that back. So good for us. And then on an inhale, you're going to unwrap those arms, float them up to the sky, press palms together. And then exhale, we're going to take it down into that forward fold. You can walk your hands down your body for a little extra support. First, just make sure it feels okay to be in that forward fold. And then if you're doing all right, you can walk those hands a little bit over to the right side. So we breathe space into the side of the body. We breathe space into the back of the shoulder blades. This tends to get a little bit more into the low back, and because we're a little bit over to the right side, you might feel this on the left low back a little bit more. It's okay if you don't feel a big stretch there, but if you have a tight quadriceps, that's a section of muscles that are, if you think of where like jean back pockets are, the muscle structures are a little bit higher than those back pockets. So, all right, take one more breath here. Let's walk those hands back to center and let's roll back up through the spine. Coming back up to a tall seat. You can roll the shoulders here. Just kind of check in with how that is for the body. And we'll be incorporating those movements and wraps a little bit later in practice. But for now, let's do a little bit of the work with the eagle legs. So even from the chair, you can focus on a little bit of that eagle wrap. First, I want to just start with from the seat of the chair. You want to make sure that both feet are flat to the floor. And then a little bit of space in between the legs. And you want to press your hands just right or place the hands right to the inner thighs. Now you're going to have, and it doesn't matter if the backs of the hands are there or the palms of the hands. I find it a little easier to access the backs of the hands into the thighs. You're going to push the hands apart like they're trying to draw outward. And at the same time, you're going to have the legs push inward. So they're going in, the hands are going out, and it's kind of like a tug of war that's never going to win. So you might feel a little bit of activity in the leg muscles. You're probably feeling this in the little shoulders too, because the arms are efforting against this. And the good thing is you get to pick your own tug of war. You can go stronger or lighter with this. Just remember to breathe. All right, let's go ahead and relax that. So you can relax the arms, you can relax the legs. It might even feel good to just kind of windshield wiper or shake those legs out. Now, what we do a lot in most of our practices is a single leg external rotation. We do that in something like tree pose. We do that in something like pigeon pose, like we do at the end of the class. Eagle legs is not that. The idea is that you are stacking one leg over the top of the other. So another way to kind of build into this, and we'll do some of this work standing if you're doing standing in your practice today, but just as seated, you're going to go ahead and step your right foot a little bit more than the left. It's kind of hard to, let me go ahead and turn to the side so you can see that a little better. So you're going to have the right foot come a little bit more in front of the left. And then just see if that does create any type of stretch for you. If that doesn't really do much as far as stretch sensation or challenge, and you're wanting a little bit more, you're going to, almost like you're walking on a tightrope, you're going to bring that right foot in front of the left foot. Now, at the same time, note if the knees are kind of like drawing out towards or away from the body, you want them to draw in towards each other. So you're kind of gluing the knees together in this tightrope configuration. Now, if that's going okay, you could even cross that right foot over a little further. But again, those couple pieces you got to hang on to. You got to keep those knees kind of glued or drawn together so that the knee stays in good alignment. And you want your feet to be flat to the floor. You don't want to be rolled out to the side, right? So we're still just drawing everything in. It might even help you to hug the belly muscles in and really sit tall for this. So you're drawing the legs together. We're doing that same thing that we did just with the hands, but now we're pressing our legs together. And then go ahead and let's relax that. So you can relax the legs, you can uncross them, you can take a moment to step the feet wide and windshield wiper those knees. And so when we do full eagle, we'll be putting these two things together in a little bit. But for now, that's just kind of a taste or a sampling. Let's go ahead and try those three positions on the other side. So again, option one is left foot comes a little bit more in front of the right. It might be that you do almost like a tightrope, but then again, just be aware of where the knees are in alignment. You might even feel this on the outer IT bands. You might have outer IT bands at the side of the legs. You might feel that. And then still drawing towards the midline. If you wanted to cross over to the side, right, you can do that. That particular, on this side for me doesn't work well, so I'm going to stay with the tightrope setup. And then you're still going to draw the knees towards each other. You're going to make sure that those feet are flat to the floor. You might even go the opposite direction, right? Hug the belly in and sit tall. So you're really working those leg muscles. It's pretty amazing if somebody would kind of see what you're doing. You're just, it doesn't look like they're doing much work, but really there can be a lot going on with this leg activation. All right, let's go ahead and relax that. So again, you can unwind the legs, you can step them wide, and you can gently rock the legs side to side. Let's take a seated forward fold together. So on your next inhale, float those arms up to the sky, and exhale, go ahead and take that forward fold, breathe into your back. From that forward fold, let's go ahead and roll back up to a tall spine. We'll go ahead and now start to take practice into an option to either stay seated or rising up to standing. So for those of you that are going to stay seated, we're going to work on high leg lift, tapping the toe down, and then returning it back to a flat foot. So again, it's just lifting that leg up, tapping the foot, lifting the leg back up and lowering. We're going to do that same thing standing. So just know that you have that option. If you are rising up to standing with me, go ahead and find your way up to the feet. What I like about um, doing this standing, if you have, you can either use like the side leg of the chair if your chair doesn't have a rung in the middle of the legs. But either way, when we do this, if you're doing it standing, you can tap onto, that object as we leg lift. So if you need the support, the chair's right there. You can take hold. You could also be doing this at a wall if the chair is too low. You want to be nice and long. Go ahead and shift more into your right foot than your left, and go ahead and lift the left knee up high. Tap the side of your chair or that rung, and then go ahead and lower. And if you're doing this seated, of course, you're doing the same thing, but you're tapping down to the floor. Shift over to the other side, pick and lift up that opposite heel. Go ahead and tap and lower. Let's do this a couple more times. You might be going a different space, but just remember to feel that center, shift into one leg before picking up the other leg, and then doing the same thing the other way. So again, shift, lift up the leg, tap, and lower. We're gonna go one more time each side. It's okay if you're going faster or slower than me, just as long as you're staying present to the work. All right, once both feet are back down, you might step outer hip width apart. And here it might feel good to take a nice forward fold. So forward folds, especially if you're behind the chair, you could do something like rest the hands to the back of the chair or seat of the chair. You can, of course, go lower if that would feel good. But we're taking a moment just to let the body integrate some of that work. We're starting to build some of the work in the muscles. From that forward fold, if you're still there, go ahead and roll back up. And now we're going to go ahead and set up into warrior two pose, just kind of setting aside some of the eagle practices. So if you are seated in the chair, you're swinging your right thigh over to the side, right? And then that other leg can extend, and you're opening up the arms in opposite direction. If you are standing behind the chair, you're going to go ahead and step those feet wide. You're going to go ahead and point the toes out to the side and bend into that knee. And then if you feel comfortable releasing the arms, you're extending that right arm forward over the front knee, back arm behind, or you're holding onto the chair for support. Flip both palms up to the sky for a moment and just see if that feels nice across the chest and the heart. Go ahead and reach up and back with that front palm for goddess warrior. You can always hold onto the chair for support if you're behind it. Now in warrior two, we're going to go ahead and return there and then add in eagle arms. So here's a couple variations for you. If you're relying on holding onto the chair, you're simply going to take that right hand and bring it across the left shoulder. I call that single wing, right? If an eagle wrap arm sounds like a nice, appropriate thing to do for your shoulders, you're going to cross the right elbow under left. You again kind of have that same option of hugging the arms, genie arms, or forearm stack. So lots of options here. We're going to start to open up those shoulders in an appropriate way. Don't strain the shoulders. Still feel strong in the legs, right? Don't forget they're holding us there. And now you can even slightly lift the chest or the chin up. So it's a very, very, very little back bend. All right, bring your spine neutral. Go ahead and open up those arms again. You can let those arms relax. Go ahead and if you're standing, straighten that front leg. Parallel the feet wide and go ahead and heel toe or step those feet together. If you are seated, you're swinging both legs back around to the front of your chair. Inhale, you can reach those arms up to the sky. Exhale, forward fold. Again, it might feel good to breathe into that back. Anything that takes just a moment to on or create a little bit of ease in the body and the spine. From that forward fold, let's go ahead and roll back up to standing. We're going to do warrior two to the other side. So same thing. If you're in the chair, you're swinging that left thigh around to the side and then setting up the other leg before opening up those arms. Standing, you're spinning the left toes out to the side and then opening up warrior two. Just taking a moment to feel your strength in warrior two. Let's bring this into goddess warrior. So flip that left palm, reach it up and back. And you can always do an alternate lift. You're trying to create length through that rib cage. You can always also have the back hand secured on the chair. Let's go ahead and open towards our eagle wrap. So that is possibly left arm, single wing over to the right shoulder. If you're utilizing both arms, that is left elbow underneath right. And then giving yourself that hug, that wrap, or that forearm stack like genie arms. So find what feels, again, like a positive stretch for you. Then remember or remind yourself to activate the legs. You're pressing down into the earth. You're drawing the heels actively towards each other, even though they're not going to move. Keeping those legs nice and strong, stabilizing the joints. On your next inhale, let's go ahead and unwrap those eagle arms. You can go ahead and relax the arms, start to release the posture by coming back to mountain or centered pose. Inhale, reach the arms up to the sky. Exhale, forward fold. From that forward fold, let's go ahead and roll back up to mountain pose. So we're going to go ahead and now practice our eagle pose. Eagle pose is a balance posture, but there's a lot going on. So I want you to find what feels like the right setup for you. I'm just going to briefly demonstrate some different ones. You can play around with them, but just know you don't have to hold any of these for any amount of time because I'll give you time to practice when you kind of think of which setup that you might want. I forgot to mention that if you have pretty easy access to wall space, that's actually my favorite way to practice eagle pose, but we'll also do one at the chair or seated in the chair and standing. So option one, if you're staying seated in the chair, the legs kind of come just like you think of if you're crossing your legs. And I know for years people are like, don't cross your legs, it's bad for your joints. We're setting up the practice so that it should be okay, right? That it shouldn't cause damage. So you're crossing the leg over. Now I have some extra tissue and things like that. So my knee does go out a little bit, but the intention is you're going to try and draw the knees in. You're trying to hug them together really strong. My muscles are working really hard to try to stack this knee over the top of the other one. And my toes are pointed down. Again, you might have a different range or flexibility. This is just where I am seated. And then you can actually add those eagle arms in just a little bit. So like I said, you can play around with all of these options I'm going over briefly, or you can kind of pick which one works for you. If you're doing eagle with a support in front of you as we practice often, we're going to revisit our leg options that we played around with before we did standing. So option one, you step one foot in front of the other and you're weighted more to the back foot. Option two, you make that a tightrope, right? So that one foot is in front of the other. The third option, you begin to lift the leg up high, cross it over the other top thigh. Remember, this is not figure four. You're not going for tree pose or external rotation. You're trying to stack thigh to thigh. and then squeezing everything towards that centered leg. The back of the back leg squeezes towards the front leg squeezes back, and then you all draw it in towards the midline. And then you can, again, if you're holding onto the chair, you're simply going to do a single wing eagle arm. If you want to be adventurous and do no arms, look, mom, no hands, right? You could do the eagle wrap. Okay, so that's option 2. Option 3 is, like I said, we're going to have plenty of time to play with this for longer times in a bit. Option 3 is you're going to find your wall space and lean your back against the wall. This takes out a little bit of the balance challenge, but it also lets us use our muscles a little bit more precisely. And so that can build strength really well, bone density really well. And I kind of like this option of leaning into the back of the wall. So if you have a wall space, I encourage you to access it. Again, you're going to lean into the wall. You should feel your hips and your shoulders into the wall. If your feet are tight to the baseboard, you're going to want to bring them a little bit forward, at least 4 or 5 inches. And then again, you're going to do that same thing. You're going to pick a standing leg. You're going to either point the foot forward, tightrope it, or you begin to pick that knee up really high and cross it. Now, statistically, some people can actually take their big toe and wrap it behind their calf. That is definitely not my body or my anatomy, but it is possible. So the idea is directionally, these toes are pointing down towards the floor as you're drawing everything in towards your midline. Then you're going to go ahead and add that eagle wrap. So you can soar your arms, as I like to think of it, and then cross. If you're standing on your right leg, you're crossing right elbow underneath left elbow. And then to come out of this safely, I like to think of, once again, flying. So you simply unwrap those legs or arms, kick out that leg, and then land everything down. So we just kind of quickly explored 3 options. Think about which one you might want to try. And now we're going to hold it for a little bit of time. So if you've tried all 3 and you kind of were on that same side, we're still going to do both sides again, but let's go ahead and set up what you think you'd like to do. Again, I'll demonstrate from the wall space. Actually, I see a lot of people at chairs. So I'm going to demonstrate the chair version of this where I've got it in front of me as a whole, but you've got 3 options to explore. So first, you're going to go ahead and pick your standing leg. Again, I'm going to pick my left leg because I think I was standing on my right leg for all 3 of those demonstrations. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap the leg. So I'm lifting my right knee really high, bringing it across the thigh, squeezing the legs together. Even that back knee should be bent a little bit, pushing towards the front of the leg. You're drawing everything in towards the middle. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the left arm, cross it across to the right. I'm going to leave my other hand on the chair. I'm still working eagle wrap a lot. You can do this without the support if you choose. 6 breaths. Good work, everyone. From who I can see, you're doing a great job with your eagles. As smoothly as you can, let's go ahead and unwrap that eagle so you can kick the leg out, the hand out, and simply land back down both feet. Once you're there, you might need a little space for those hips. Step wide, circle those hips around. If you know that you need a lot of space for your low back, you might simply come to a forward fold. Take care of any other needs that you need. So I kind of teach this thing. It helps me teach stronger classes by kind of bringing this to different styles of yoga that I teach. And so I've been thinking of that. I think it is the Eagles that do it. It's like there's a song in the 70s, it's like fly like an eagle. And anyway, so I've been thinking about that song all week. So hopefully you feel like a graceful eagle. It takes a lot of strength, right, to show that grace and feel that. So I think that's what's beautiful about this pose. And like I said, I think when people think of like yogis, they like do some kind of like wacky thing like this to demonstrate it. So this is why I always think of that people who know nothing about yoga usually know this pose. So we're going to go ahead and do that other side. So again, if you are following along with my cueing my side, you're going to go back to that right side and we're going to give it some time. So you're going to find your center into that right leg. You're going to go ahead and either step forward, tightrope, or you're going to bring that leg up nice and high and cross it over the thigh, pointing the toes down. So if you've got a good eagle wrap, you're activating, squeezing through a lot of those leg muscles, belly muscles, and then you're going to go ahead and if you're in the right leg standing, you're crossing a right elbow underneath left. Garudasana or eagle pose. Good. And you've got all those options for eagle wraps, right? The hug, genie arms. What gives your shoulders the best support, which might be single wing. Keep working the legs. Keep breathing. On your next inhale, again, you can fly like an eagle, if you will. Open everything up and then land back down onto both feet. All right, so go ahead and shake out that standing leg if you need to. You could circle out or swim through those hips. Good work, everyone. You can take a forward fold here if you need to. So I do want to do one more a little bit more activating posture before we start to get a little bit more gentle in our practice. And this is usually, I think it's going to work best for everybody to do seated today. We sometimes do camel pose standing or seated. So if you know that you want to stay standing for a little longer, you can, of course, stand. But in some ways, I want you to be very intent on how you open up the heart. And so by coming to the sit bones, you actually have to focus a little bit more on where the spine is in practice. So setting up for camel pose, I do like to start out with bringing hands to heart. You might think about if the shoulders feel lifted, not lifted, but necessarily like back. So it feels like you give your chest or front a little bit more space. It might make sense to actively draw the shoulders back, but not too strong. Breathe nice and strong. And then bring your heart towards your hands. So this is just going to feel like you're drawing your heart forward. And somebody kind of confused about this cue the other day, and it's not squeezing those shoulder blades, right? It's not that you're doing that, although that can activate openness to the heart, but it's almost like you're trying to expand that rib cage. We were doing that with breath earlier, right? Where you breathe in and open up those intercostal muscles. We're working that as we bring our heart into our hands. So it's a very subtle movement. You can expand it or feel maybe a little bit more expressive with it by coming into cactus arms. So only if this feels like this serves your practice and gives you more space across the heart as it continues to give you space to the back. You know, it could be cactus arms, it could be Wisconsin W arms, however you like to think of it. If you're a football fan, it'd be field goal arms. All right, let's take one more big breath here. And then as you exhale, let's go ahead and release the hands. You can bring those shoulders forward. You can draw your chin down, and you might even go right into a forward fold. From that forward fold, you can go ahead and roll back up to a tall spine. And then I'd like to offer that we do a seated twist. So seated twist, again, we're starting to get to a more gentle space in practice where you don't necessarily have to feel as intense in the movements that we're doing in the body to access the benefits of this. Twists are designed to neutralize the body. So first, you do want to actively lengthen up through the spine. Then let's go ahead and take the left hand across towards that right thigh. Start to turn or open your body to the right. Now that right hand, you can bring it onto your waist. You could hold onto a part of the chair, and you can look to your right or maybe even over your right shoulder, just depending on how that feels for your neck. We're going to take about 6 slow, gentle breaths here. At this point, I'd leave out any breath holds, trying to bring our nervous system to a nice calm space. Take one more inhale on this side. Exhale. Let's come back to center. Take a nice inhale, lengthen up through the spine, and then let's take it over to the other side. So right hand comes across the left thigh, left hand again, maybe you hold on to the waist, maybe you hold on to part of the chair, and then you can gaze towards the left. Take one more inhale here, and then exhale. Let's come back to center. I'd like to do a seated 5-pointed star. So if you are a little forward from the backrest of your chair, I'd recommend leaning into the back of the chair for this. Go ahead and express or expand the arms out again to a space that feels good, whether it's more overhead, more out to the diagonal or to the side. It's really okay wherever you choose. And then you can extend those legs as long as it doesn't feel like you're going to fall off your chair. My chair is a little slippery and the fabric on my clothes feels that way. So I'm going to have a little bend to my knees, but you're simply going to press down through the feet. You're going to expand out through the fingertips, and you might even feel your heart lift slightly. And then let's take a big breath into the heart. Sigh or exhale out. Deep breath in. Sigh or exhale out. Taking one more active space here. And as you exhale, you can simply start to release the hands. You can glide those feet back underneath and taking one more forward fold if that would feel good for your body or practice. Go ahead and roll back up to a tall spine. Now, we have a little bit of time that I sometimes like to just call yogi playtime, which is maybe there's something that I didn't offer you today that you are needing or wanting in your body. One thing that we usually do after most of our practices is pigeon pose. And I did reference it a lot because I was talking about how the legs are a little different for eagle versus pigeon. But if you're feeling you want a little bit of stretch to the hips, you could do something like figure 4 or pigeon pose. You might feel like you need some movement through the spine. So it might be just simply that you organically roll through cow and cat pose. You might also just take this time to give yourself a nice long extra shavasana and set up so that you're nice and comfortable and find your rest in the posture. So like I said, we've got a little bit of like free time today. Maybe again, there's just something I didn't offer in your practice, and you want a little bit more time to just explore that. And maybe if after all that I say that and there's just too many avenues, it doesn't feel like there is a good choice, I would say just randomly try something. And if it doesn't feel like that was the right way, just simply pause that and go on to something else. That being said, if you did set up with that figure four, right, that's a really good one to do after everything that we've done. We're about 4 breaths away from halfway through. So just know that you can start to finish your first side if you're doing something that is left to right. Again, if you're just simply doing organic movements, seeing how the shoulders feel and flowing with it, you can just keep going with that. But at this moment, we're about halfway through our exploration. So if you did do something like figure four for your body, just go ahead and release the first side. Go ahead and set up the other side for yourself. Again, if you're doing something else, that is okay too. And the power of rest, I think that we don't give the importance of active rest in our bodies. And so it's okay to decide that extra long Shavasana sounds like the perfect practice for you today. It gives you extra time to soak in all of the work that we did energetically, to feel that movement through you. And yeah, like that's a good option too. Otherwise, if you're still doing just some nice organic movements for your body, just checking in with all of those little spaces that sometimes hold some tension, take about 5 more breaths with that movement and starting to find Shavasana. For those of you that may already be near Shavasana, if you haven't, just maybe check or explore one more little movement or wiggle so that you're fully relaxed or at ease in your posture. If are using the support of the back of the chair, just making sure that that does feel comfortable. And your hands can be at ease. Now, if you're finishing up on movement, again, just a couple more breaths, and then you're going to start to find this stillness posture as well. In the seat of the chair, it might be that you simply rest your hands onto your lap. I kind of like if you have a cushion or pillow nearby to simply bring that onto the legs and rest the hands onto that cushion. And then you can close your eyes. All of that focus on giving our body some extra breath today. Here, you simply want to let your automatic breath capacities do the work. Your body will breathe for you without even thinking about it. So just let any last effort or purposeful breath go. Your body knows what to do. Just make sure that everything feels somewhat at ease. Relax that space that's in between the eyebrows. Relax your jawline. Maybe we did do a lot of shoulder work. Maybe relax or soften those shoulders. Final Shavasana. Know that you can take all the time that you need to continue to rest and be at ease in final Shavasana. There may be some richness within that. It feels good to stay in these waters for a little longer. Take your time. If you start to feel a sense of wakefulness within, you might start to find some movements and wakefulness without. Something like wiggling fingers and toes, circling around in wrists and ankles. It might feel good to stretch or do some more just gentle organic movements. But again, take your time. There is no rush. If there's a way in which you like to close out your own practice, maybe just take a moment to do that for your own body and being. Maybe it is to bring a hand to your heart, feeling that pulse within. Maybe there's something that you'd like to lead into the rest of your day, whether it is gratitude or joy or strength. I'd like to offer that we close in community. So if you're in a space to come back into coming into a seat, you can bring hands to heart center for Anjali Mudra. And then I would like to guide you through an Om. Know that you can join in with your voice or ears however you'd like. We'll exhale, inhale, and then Om. So whenever you're ready, exhale out all the air in your body. Take a deep breath in. The light and the joy and peace within me honors and sees that light and that joy and that peace within you. Thank you for sharing your heart and your energy in the space today. Namaste. All right, I will certainly stay online for anybody who has any questions or needs anything, but I will also go ahead and stop our recording.